Hello and welcome back to Biblical Conversations with Korey, where we believe that the Bible is right about everything that we talk about. Now, today, this one is one that we're excited about. This is one that somebody has been wanting a video for, somebody in our youth group for a little while now, and so I'm excited to finally get around to it. Now, before we dive into it, let me say, this is one of those topics where there's a lot of people that do not know for sure what the right answer to this is, okay? Like, really, people that are way smarter than me, people that have been studying this kind of stuff a lot longer than me, do not have exact definitive answers. So I got to tell you that you may leave this video and I'm not going to give you anything necessarily where I'm like, that is the right answer, 100%, take it to the bank. But we can kind of make some conclusions. We can kind of say it's most likely that this happened. And so just want to make sure that we understand that from the beginning, that what I say on this video is not that's the truth. That's 100% it. I'm just telling you kind of what I've researched. And the other thing is this is one that honestly, if we disagree on it, or if somebody else disagrees on it with us, it doesn't matter. This topic does not determine whether we are saved or not. This topic, we can still go to church together and disagree on this. It's not that big a deal. But today, we are going to talk about dinosaurs. And we're going to talk about whether we're not covering every single thing with them, but we're going to talk about, does the Bible mention dinosaurs? Did they exist when humans existed? When did they possibly die? And the person that submitted this question, because I know who this was, they talked to me personally about it. They were mainly wanting to know the timeline, like the Bible and dinosaurs and all that stuff. And again, I'm going to give you a theory, but not, we don't know for sure. Okay, we can say most likely it was this, but we don't know for sure. But anyway, I'm excited to dive into this. We love dinosaurs. We love talking about dinosaurs. I mean, who don't like dinosaurs, right? We're not really getting into Jurassic Park or anything like that. So if you like that movie and you clicked on this video, and that's not what we're getting into. But we're excited to dive into this topic. And let me say that right now it's graduation season, so I hope everybody's doing well with that. And if you've graduated already or you're about to graduate, I wish you the best, and I hope that everything turns out well. But let's start this talk. Let's get into dinosaurs today on this video. Okay, so first, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to just answer the simple question, are dinosaurs even mentioned in the Bible? Now, the word dinosaur is not. The word dinosaurs, that's not in the Bible. You won't find it there. Maybe there's some kind of translation out there, but for the most part, no, it's not in there. However, we do get names of specific animals that, we're not sure what they are, or what they mean. And there's two of them in particular that are found in your Bible, and they're both in the book of Job. So if you want to look at Job, you can go there in chapter 40 and chapter 41. And so we're going to look at both of those right now. And the two that they are, the two animals, creatures that they are, is the behemoth and the leviathan. Okay, so first let's look at what Job says about the behemoth, and that's in Job 40. Starting in verse 15, so I'll read that here. Okay, so verse 15. Let's go down to verse 18. This is the Lord talking. He says, "Behold, behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like bars of iron." Okay, so that sounds like a pretty big animal, doesn't it? I mean, behemoth sounds pretty massive. And behemoth is used a lot of times to describe something big, so I've heard people joke and be like, man, I got a behemoth pile of homework. I got this big behemoth of a car or a machine or, washing machine, something like that. And so it's used to describe something big. And so that's why a lot of people think that maybe that's a dinosaur, because it was a bigger animal. And then we've got a leviathan, okay, and that's just one chapter over, chapter 41. So let's read a few verses on leviathan. Chapter 41, verse 1, God talking again. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fish hook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many pleas to you? Will he speak to you soft words? Will he make a covenant with you to take to take him for your servant forever. So these are two pretty big animals that you kind of hear, and he's even challenging. He says, "Hey, can you? Are you able to tame these types of? Are you able to put a fish hook in their nose to summon them and to capture them and things like that?" And so, like that idea, that mindset would lead somebody to think that, hey, this is a big animal. Okay, this is something big. This is not something very small. This isn't like hunting a deer or something like that. Like this is serious stuff. These are big things. Now, the thing that people push back on that they can't be dinosaurs is they say that a behemoth sounds a lot like a hippo maybe, or like an elephant, like maybe something bigger, because he describes his bones are like bars of iron, or tubes of bronze, and his limbs, his arms and legs are like bars of iron. And so this is a very strong animal. This is something that would not be very easy to tame and to capture. So a lot of people think maybe like an elephant or a hippo or something like that. And then the Leviathan, there's a few different things. I've heard whales or things like that, because this is something in the sea. Obviously, this is a sea creature. And Leviathan's used a lot of times, like in movies, to maybe be some kind of dragon or something like that, in some of those mythical movies, that type of thing. And so a lot of people think, no, this is not a dinosaur. This is an animal we know, but they're just describing it as a behemoth or a Leviathan. But, and again, me personally, I don't really have one belief or the other. I'm not sure if I think it's a dinosaur or an actual animal that we know of. But there's been a lot of people that push back and say, well, why wouldn't they just say those animals if that's what they were talking about? And the way that God describes them makes them sound pretty intimidating and pretty scary to take on. And that it was written to these people at a specific time, and when they heard Leviathan or Behemoth, they knew, like this is serious business. This is a real deal here. And so that's kind of some of our evidence that dinosaurs existed. That's kind of them being mentioned, is that it's likely that that's what those two animals are referring to. And again, there's people that disagree heavily with that. There's people that don't, right? I'm not sure where I fall on that, but there's something to kind of maybe you can dig into and kind of work through on your own as far as dinosaurs being mentioned in the Bible. Okay, now secondly, we've got to think about, did dinosaurs exist when humans did? So did Adam ever see a dinosaur, right? I mean, did Adam and Eve, did they see dinosaurs in their time? Were dinosaurs on the ark? That's another big question. When Noah's Ark, were they there? Okay. So something to kind of think about, excuse me here, is we're not going to get very deep into this, but it kind of depends on whether you are, and we're going to kind of learn some terms here on this video, if you believe in an old earth or you believe in a new earth. Okay, now, an old earth, that is that you believe that the earth is millions of years old, okay? A new earth or young earth is that you think is kind of just thousands, maybe like 4,000 to 6,000 years. That's kind of the period that people think. Now, if you think that it's a young earth, so it's thousands of years and not millions, dinosaurs definitely would have had to be in there somewhere, a little earlier. Whereas if it's millions, dinosaurs could have been way before, like God doesn't, people say that maybe God, allowed dinosaurs to live before he decided to create all the things that he did. And maybe there's a lot of theories. That's what I'm saying. Okay. I will tell you, I believe in a young earth. So I don't think the earth is millions of years old, and I could be wrong, and that's okay. But I believe that it's thousands of years old. And so with that idea, usually if you believe that, then you do think that dinosaurs were here when the early humans were here. Okay, so like Adam and Eve and all those. Now, here's where we gotta kind of understand some things, and you'll have to do some research on your own. I'm not going to give you pictures and all kinds of things to do. Well, I may throw some pictures in here. We'll see. But one kind of thing to think about, and you probably know this already because we didn't have this kind of stuff when I was in school. All this kind of research had not been done yet and had not been discovered. But dinosaurs usually are not, or they most likely were not what we think of when we think of dinosaurs. A lot of them, okay? So, like for example, when we think of like a velociraptor. And recently they've discovered that they were not as big as a lot of them as they look like in Jurassic Park and things like that. They were probably smaller, and they even probably had feathers. I've seen some pictures of what they kind of think they might look like. And so, a velociraptor wouldn't have been as intimidating to live with as the ones on Jurassic Park if they were like that. The other thing is like a T-Rex, Now, a T-Rex was a beast, okay? That is true. But they've kind of proven that a T-Rex was probably not as big, like as gargantuan as it is like on Jurassic Park or things like that. Now, there were some big dinosaurs, okay? But a lot of those were your plant eaters and things like that. I mean, there's fossils, stuff like that. But there's belief, and again, I'm not sure where I am on this, but there's belief that a lot of the really dangerous dinosaurs were not as big as we think they are, okay? Now, what that means is, that they possibly wouldn't have been as intimidating to be around or live with or things like that, or they might have even, most likely, and we're going to get into some more of this here in a second, they most likely would have maybe not wanted to be around humans, because like a lot of wild animals are scared of humans, right? I mean, like animals that could kill us. If we kind of bow up on them and we kind of act strong and big on them, they run away, right? And so there's that kind of belief that, yes, they did live with humans, but it wasn't like we think. It wasn't like, dinosaurs just like killing people constantly all over the place. I'm sure it happened, but it didn't happen as often as maybe we would think. Another kind of way we can kind of think about this, while we have evidence for them living with humans at the same time, is because you got to remember this is in a time where there's no social media, there's no phones, nothing like that. And so what we've got are these, it starts with a P and I forgot what it's called, plectographs, something like that. You can look it up. Maybe I'll throw the word up on the screen or something when I edit this video. But what you would have is you'd have people, and you've kind of seen this like on The Lion King or things like that, where people draw on the rocks, they paint and they make pictures and things like that. And there's been many, many, many discoveries of different tribes and different regions back then, different people groups making drawings of dinosaurs. And a lot of the pictures are very similar, okay? Like a lot of them look the same. Now, can people just make up monsters on their own and not have anything to base it off of? Of course, yes. But you got to think, like, this is in a early time. This is not, like, there's not been a lot of development on the earth, so that's not a popular thing that people just draw and they just imagine things. That's just not a thing like it is today. And so they most likely were getting this from somewhere, and they most likely were seeing these things in real life or wherever it may be. So that's one evidence. That's a big evidence. Is where are they getting this from? They just all these people happen to be drawing the same type of animal and same type of creatures, and they just happen to be, and none of those people ever met, and they're in different regions and things like that, and it just happens to look the same. That seems very unlikely. It would make more sense to believe that they're drawing this because they're seeing these things pretty regularly, and they're able to have something to draw from. And so that's another pretty good that's pretty good evidence that they existed when humans did. The other thing is that people get asked a lot, or people ask a lot about this topic, is were dinosaurs on the ark with Noah? And again, we don't know this for sure. I'm sure there's people that claim that they do know it for sure. So we can only look at, was it likely or was it not likely? Now, what people have a problem with here on this is they'll say, well, a lot of the dinosaurs, now we did just say that several of them are probably not as big as we originally thought, but I mean, there's still some big dinosaurs, okay? And even though the ark was huge, how are these dinosaurs all fitting on the ark? Right? And the thing to think about there, and this not even with just dinosaurs either, but this probably with most of the animals, right? That Moses, I said Moses. Did I call him? I think I called him Moses a while ago too, accidentally. If I said Moses, I meant Noah. Noah, he took, probably most likely he took younger, younger animals. So he didn't take a fully grown, elephant, or he didn't take a fully grown tiger or lion. Most likely, he probably took cubs or babies, or maybe a little bit older than a baby. But he probably didn't take the oldest because he wanted to continue that line of that animal, and so obviously he needs younger ones to raise up, so that they can have more babies, and so they can grow, the population of that animal. So it wouldn't have made a lot of sense for him to take one of the older ones, one of the fully grown, if there were dinosaurs, a fully grown dinosaur for one, so that wouldn't even made sense because they're probably going to die soon. So why would he even take them? And so yeah, the whole that they won't fit on the ark, I mean that can easily be answered. But the other thing is that that again, if we're thinking that they did exist, then they most likely would have been on the ark with him, just like all the other animals. And we'll get into what possibly happened to them after that, if they were on the ark. And again, we don't know for sure. And because of what we're going to talk about, that's when a lot of people think that dinosaurs died out, and it kind of makes some sense. But just to answer that really quickly, it's likely that they could have been on the ark. There's several ways to answer all the objections, most of them. It just depends on if they were around by the time Noah, built the ark and got on the ark and whatnot. Okay, so the last thing we'll kind of talk about here is, when is it likely that dinosaurs went extinct? Maybe even how did they go extinct? There's a lot of theories on that, obviously, and we're not going to go through every single theory. But just something to kind of think about is a lot of people think that, and for this discussion, we're going to assume that dinosaurs were on the ark, that they made it that far. If you don't believe that, that's okay. All right. Again, this is not that big a deal if we disagree. And this is just for the sake of the argument. But if they made it that far, then most likely they were done. They were done after they were dead. They were extinct after the flood, because what a lot of people think is there was a change, in the atmosphere. There was a change in oxygen levels and things like that. And there's really good evidence for this, because if you read the Old Testament, you noticed that people were alive. We got guys living for 900 years, 800 years, I'm not about to say what you think I'm about to say, 700 years, 600 years, 500 years. I mean, that was normal, which is crazy to think about, because what is considered old in that, I don't even know. That's a whole discussion for another day. But so after the flood, though, you start noticing people are not living as long, and that a lot of people think that's because of the atmosphere change. When the flood came, you have to look into all this, but when the flood came, there were different atmospheric changes and things. There was a canopy that's talked about in Genesis, and it opened up, and a lot of different things. Not as much moisture in the air anymore, those types of things. And so what we've got to consider is that because of that change, a lot of people think that maybe, the dinosaurs could not adapt well to that change, and that this is where they begin to pass away, to become extinct, and their body was not made for that environment after the flood, and so we see them die out and we see them go extinct. And then the other thing is a lot of people think that they probably did exist after the flood, and that there's a really good possibility that people think that humans hunted them and killed them and ate them, or used them for trophies or, whatever it may be. And again, because what we talked about earlier, there's, a lot of them were not as big as we thought, and so they wouldn't have been that big a deal. I mean, humans take down some pretty big animals these days, and they catch big animals these days, and they've got to survive. Back in those times, food's not as available necessarily, and so this is a really good possibility that may be what happened, is that humans just hunted them down, and that's why they're gone. But a lot of people go with the post flood, the environment change. That one has a lot of popularity. A lot of people kind of go with that as far as Christianity goes. Again, I know there's theories about that they froze, or I think there's one about like volcanic eruptions, and there's all kind of theories out there, but this is just the one. This is one of the popular ones that people look at when we're talking about the Bible and dinosaurs and things like that. I hope this was very helpful for you, and I hope that this answered a little bit about as far as where you think maybe the dinosaurs fall in the timeline of the Bible and all that. I hope it was good for you. I'm sorry we didn't get super deep into Jurassic Park or anything like that, or Land Before Time, which I think is an awesome dinosaur movie. There was also a really good show called Dinosaurs when I was a little kid, and I know you're probably going to say, oh, so it was in black and white. But it was really good. The only thing with that show is you can ask your parents. Your parents probably remember this show, but the very last episode gets pretty dark, okay? And you can probably guess it's dinosaurs. It's the last episode. What do you think is happening? All right, I'll just leave it right there. But anyway, if you're a fan of dinosaurs, it's a pretty good show. But anyway, thank you for checking out this video. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful. Keep sending in questions. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all the good YouTube-y stuff. And we will catch you on the next one. God bless.